Hi guys, welcome back aboard our 44-foot hurricane damage DIY catamaran project boat. This week we might be able to get the two engines back inside of the boat. That would be awesome. But to do that, I need a second pair of hands. So while we're waiting to see if we can get a bit of assistance, let's see if we can figure out what all the old through holes did, and maybe we can get rid of a few of them. We have these major milestones for the summer of 2025 up here on the door. That is working engines, steering, watertight hulls, and anchoring setup. Summer is getting awfully close, and the reason we have those specific milestones is because that's the bare minimum we need to be able to move this catamaran 700 miles north to North Carolina. Moving a hunk of fiberglass like this catamaran over land for such a long distance is horrendously expensive. So the only option for us is to put it in the water and motor it up the ICW. There are many good reasons why we want to bring the big hunk of fiberglass up to North Carolina, but let's save that discussion for when we start bringing Athena, our other boat, the boat we're living aboard, up to North Carolina. Now that'll happen sometime in late April, and the big plan is to bring Athena up there and then come back to Florida, and then hopefully in a month or two be able to bring the catamaran up there too. But that means the pressure is very much on to get done with those milestones. Before doing anything else, I went around the hull to identify any damage I'd need to fix, like these small cracks around the exhaust or these old holes left over from underwater lights and old strainers. I've been running in and out of the boat all afternoon to see if I could figure out what the through holes do. I've come up with this drawing. I've marked all of the through holes on the drawing here. The little squares are above the waterline and the little circles are below the waterline. But there are some of them where I just couldn't figure out what they used to do because a lot of the plumbing has been torn out, so it's basically anybody's guess. But what I do know is that we need way less than we've got here to get us to North Carolina, so there's definitely a bunch of these that we can just glass over and delete. What will be kind of interesting about that is the fact that the ones that are down here, for instance, those are in solid fiberglass, whereas the ones that are up here are in the cord section of the hull, so there's a foam core up here. That means we get to try to both delete through holes in cord construction and in solid fiberglass. It'll be fun. The next morning I jumped on a FaceTime call with our friend Jim that has a much newer and much nicer version of our boat to clear up some of the plumbing mysteries. That yielded this updated and not at all confusing drawing of what used to do what. And with this knowledge I came up with a list of through holes we can delete. The old skin fittings are plastic and they're really good quality ones, so theoretically they could have lasted forever. But replacing them is cheap insurance and pretty easy. I cut off most of the head with an oscillating multi-tool and then ground off any remnants with 80 grit. During that adventure I noticed that in particular the outboard side of the port hull is far from fair. This is gonna be an issue, but we'll get back to that. Anywho, with all of these skin fittings decapitated, I could easily pull out the inside bit. Of course, getting to some of them required a little bit of adventuring. I started keeping a list of all the different sizes of through holes and what diameter hose was connected to it. The silver lining of doing all of this was that I got to see every single square millimeter of the boat. That's always a good thing. As my last action of the day, I decided to lay up some laminate for our new backing plates. These are an important part of the new through hull installations because the manufacturer specifies a minimum hull thickness of 20 millimeters. And in our case, they'll be even more important because we're switching to flush skin fittings. To give us roughly 10 millimeters worth of backing plate thickness, I laid up 10 layers of 1708, wetting it out by hand using TotalBoat's high-performance epoxy. I then vacuum bagged the laminate, mainly for the fun of it, because why do all of this if it's not fun? Alas, the combination of the Florida heat and the exothermic reaction of the epoxy curing started getting a little toasty for my liking, so I attempted to cool it down. Here are the results of my vacuum bagging efforts. I am happy to report that we avoided a thermal runaway situation, and this appears to be nice and rock solid laminate that's ready for use later today, except for the fact that Captain Dum-Dum forgot to pick up a 5-inch hole saw on the way here, so yeah, thank you, Captain Dum-Dum. This is our big bag of, or big box of composite through hulls. These are for replacing the old ones, and here in the US, it looks like there are two good options for composite through hulls. I've gone with these ones from True Design. The other option are these Marilon or Marlon. I don't know how to pronounce that, but judging by how much abuse they took getting them out of there and still being in one piece, I think this is also a solid option. The reason I chose to go with True Design is because, well, I'm used to using them, and also I like them. During Oblix's and also during Athena's refit, True Design was the only composite alternative I could get for through hulls back in Denmark, so I've used these extensively in the past and I've never had an issue with them. And also comparing the two, I do feel like the handle moves a little bit nicer on the True Design ones, but yeah, I'm sure both are good options. No matter which one of the two brands you go with, composite through hulls are pretty awesome. They are lighter than their bronze alternatives, they're also cheaper, and they don't corrode. One little thing about the True Design ones, if you want to put those in and be ABYC compliant, then you have to add True Design's load-bearing collar thingy here. But yeah, that's not a big deal. You just need to remember to do that. These are the flush skin fittings I mentioned earlier, and if you compare those to one of the regular domed ones, then you can easily tell them apart. The flush ones are designed to sit in a little recessed area of the hull. That's typically done during the manufacturing of the hull with something like this little pug that's put in, so you have that little recessed area. So for us to be able to use the flush skin fittings, there's going to be a little bit of extra work involved, but I think it'll be well worth it because it'll make it easier to mow the lawn, right? We're planning on applying copper coat, and typically the copper coat aboard Athena, we've scraped that every 3 weeks or so. Having these be flush means there's no thing to jam your scraper into when you're scraping, and I think that'll be really nice. But let's put the through hulls a little bit on the back burner because I think I hear Big Bertha rumbling in the background. This is Big Bertha. She's been hibernating in her corner of the yard for months now, but today it's her time to shine. She's going to take our engines for a ride they'll never forget. Our engine saga started 9 months ago when we bought the catamaran. The two engines had been rebuilt by the previous owner, Brian. Now when you buy a used boat, you inherit all of the previous owner's decisions, good and bad. In this case, it seems like Brian did a good job on the engines. Now before we bought the boat, we did, with the help of Todd, verify that they indeed did turn over and ran. So we knew they weren't completely hooped, but it would take an impressive amount of rapid fire from the parts cannon to get them back to their original state. We were missing alternators, all the wiring, relays, we had one bad heat exchanger, and so on and so on. Last week I was finally able to do an end-to-end test, meaning hook up the new control panels and see that everything works the way it's intended to. Now it's time to stuff them back into the boat under the watchful supervision of Annabelle and her favorite broom. Back to Big B. Bertha is a thirsty lady, but after a quick drink of diesel she was ready for some light duty. The engines only weigh about 300 pounds apiece. That's a lot for me, but nothing for dear Bertha. While Jeff is a super skilled crane operator, I am in no way skilled at giving instructions, so we took it nice and slow. Because we don't yet have a hardtop, we were able to swing the engines right in front of the big sliding door. That meant not having to deal with the 2 steps going down into the saloon.
Yeah.
Come on down, get inside.
Down.
Yep, and you're off the engine. To get the port engine into the hull, we were able to reposition the crane over an old hatch opening and use that to lift the engine down the steps. And can you lower a little bit, Jeff?
Do we want to, wait a minute.
Oh, hold up.
We're the wrong way, aren't we? We just spin it.
After Todd pointed out that potentially very silly mistake, we spun the engine around and lowered it down the rest of the way. Over in the starboard hull, we didn't have the luxury of a hatch, so Jeff and I cobbled together a kind of Jenga for adults, with high consequences. This will be the sketchiest thing I do today.
It's not even sketchy in my world.
Oh God. Jeff assured me that this was a 0 out of 10 on his sketchiness scale, but yeah, I gotta admit, I was slightly nervous. We'll leave the engine hanging there overnight because tomorrow I have some super spiffy stainless engine mounts showing up to replace the old crusty rusty ones. Let's get back to the original plan for today, which was to start to patch those holes left over from the old through holes. This is the way I learned to do it. I'm sure there are variations on this, but it's 3 steps basically. You've got a hole, you bevel the edges, and then you lay up some fiberglass. When it's a big hole below the waterline, ideally you'll want to bevel both sides like this, but sometimes we don't have access, so we can't get to the back of it, which is what's represented over here. But in my case, we have access to both the outside and the inside, so this is what we'll go for. Through the magic of video editing, I've already gone ahead and taken care of most of the oh glorious grinding that definitely doesn't leave you all itchy and annoyed. But what we're left with now are these lovely beveled patches. There are 2 lovely big holes here that we can go ahead and patch, but these were kind of fun because this was a depth sensor and this one was missing, so it might have been speed. Over here on the starboard hull, we've got another depth sensor, and in a previous video, a bunch of you guys mentioned that it's common for catamarans to have a depth sensor in each of the hulls. I get it, the catamaran is wide, it's nice to have a bit of redundancy, stuff like that. But to get the exact same data that this boat used to have, so 2 depth sounders, probably speed through the water and maybe temperature also, we can actually do that with just 1 hole. This is an Airma UDST. It's a traditional through-hole type sensor. This will give us both depth, speed, and temperature. It will do that through this guy, which, as you can see, doesn't have a paddle wheel or anything. But yeah, like I said, this is going to be poking out through the hull. Of course, that only gives us a depth sounder in 1 hull. For the other hull, I figured we could use this guy. This is an Airma P79. This guy is designed to sit in this little cradle here on the inside of the hull without penetrating the hull. They do that by filling up this little reservoir with some kind of liquid. I think Airma uses antifreeze, and then submerging this guy into it. Now, this is not a new invention. Like my first boat, Ep.623, had something kind of similar to this setup. That was a very roundabout way of telling you that even though I am glassing over these holes here, we will still have a depth sounder in each hull. So let's get to laying up some glass. And just like that, we have a bunch less holes in the boat. That's very nice. On a small peel ply related note, if I see the laminate I've laid up is proud of the surface, then I won't bother with peel ply. This repair is basically right where it needs to be. I just need to sand along the edges here and then it'll be ready for fairing compound. Whereas down here, I am proud of the surface with the laminate I've laid up with about 1 millimeter or so. So this, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of grinding anyways. Of course, you could apply peel ply everywhere. There's nothing wrong with that, but it is an extra step. And if you don't take great care when you apply peel ply, well, then it's not really worth the trouble. A little bit later in the video, we can lay up the glass for the inside part of the repairs. But today is engine day, and these should be our spiffy new engine mounts. These are super spiffy stainless engine mounts with polyurethane. I have 2 different colors here. The red ones are 75s and the yellow ones are 100s. I first saw these engine mounts in a Sam Holmes video quite a while back, and I thought they looked super spiffy. I mean, they're stainless, so they won't rust, and the polyurethane is not supposed to swell when it gets into contact with diesel, so these things should last a really long time. Here's a quick little side-by-side. There is no doubt in my mind which one of these looked like the more long-lasting product. I think Ocean Innovations might have had a brilliant idea when they started making stainless steel engine mounts. I've never seen that before. This is my friend Klaus from Denmark. He was in a video a few months ago, and he very foolishly offered to come back and lend a hand again. The engine mounts get bolted to the bottom of the engine compartments, and with a bit of bumbling around, we figured out the length and also the thread on the bolts we needed. In an attempt to not wreck anything, we chased all of the threads with a tap. Captain Dum-Dum then promptly purchased shoulder bolts rather than fully threaded bolts. Luckily, there's a thick layer of fiberglass that we can just remove a few millimeters off using a decapitated step drill without getting close to the aluminum bar that's embedded inside of the fiberglass. In a great example of boat yoga, I got myself wedged in under the starboard engine to be able to chase the threads and make room for these shoulder bolts.
Jamen så...
Ja. Så sidder man jo så her.
Og hvordan er du så få hovedet ned og lave noget?
Sådan der. Yep. Space was at a bit of a premium, and there was a slight chance of instantly getting turned into a pancake, but other than that, no issues.
Det er en bedre kameravinkel. Det havde været heroppe, hvor man kunne se, hvor fleksibel dit håndled er.
Ah.
Det er da utroligt, som du kan knække det.
Det er vel ikke værd, at jeg har fået ros for det. Det må jeg sige. Det var en ny en. Måske skulle jeg klemme mig selv ud først, inden...
Ja, den der kan vi fint tage heroppe fra.
Before anybody murders me in the comment section, we had secured the engine thoroughly before I squeezed in under it. With the engine now sitting on its spiffy new stainless engine mounts, we cleared away all of our lifting stuff, and Klaus jumped down behind the engine to start the process of aligning it. To avoid a long list of problems, it is absolutely crucial that the engine is perfectly aligned with the shaft. The little plywood contraption secures the shaft in a place where we want it, making the next steps easier. The height and the angle of the engine can be adjusted by turning the nuts on each of the mounts. Klaus used a feeler gauge to check that the 2 flanges are parallel, and then busted out Mr. Dial Indicator to perfectly center the engine on the shaft. And because Klaus is more detail oriented than I am, he also made sure that the mounts were nice and straight. We repeated the whole process over in the porthole, and this was not a quick process. Getting the new mounts on the engines, lowering the engines down, and getting them aligned took all day. Of course, while tightening the last of the bolts that secure the engine mounts, we managed to strip the threads out of the hole. The fix came in a little helicoil box. These are a true Captain Dum-Dum's best friend. They are like the Command C on your keyboard for threaded hole issues. Klaus drilled the hole up to size and used the special tap that comes with the kit to thread the hole. We then inserted the coil with the special applicator doohickey and broke off the little tap. And presto, a threaded hole that is better than new. With the engine adventure out of the way, I had a couple of other projects that would be easier to do with 2 people, like for instance getting the old giant mainsail out of the forward compartment. The reason for getting the old sail out of there was to better be able to get under the floor where there's an old depth sounder installed. After much hammering, Klaus had the brilliant idea of just pressing the stupid thing out from below with a car jack.
Oh.
The very last item on my wish list for this weekend was to get these aluminum supports installed on the tool trailer. These are for a solar panel install in one of the upcoming videos. This was also much easier to do with 2 people. It's been a busy week here aboard the catamaran. I didn't get as far with the hull repairs as I had planned, but if somebody like Jeff or Klaus offers to lend a pair of hands, then I would much rather focus on something where it's easier to do with having a bit of help, like for instance getting the engines aboard the boat or getting them lined up and stuff like that. Not only getting both of the engines inside of the boat and inside of each hull, but also bolted in place and lined up is really awesome. That is major progress. The engine mounts from Oceanic Innovations look frickin' awesome. I think it's a very spiffy upgrade. Now, in the spirit of full transparency, they did give me a small discount for showing them in the video, but they also gave me a discount code to share with all of you guys. I don't earn a commission or anything like that. I'm just excited to be able to share a discount code for a product I think looks super awesome. They have engine mounts for a wide range of engines, so if you are looking for an engine mount, they might be worth checking out. I'll include the discount code down in the description. In next week's video, I will get back to finishing the inside part of those repairs we made to the hull. Also got to get started fairing the outside of the hull below the waterline. And then next weekend, Klaus is coming back for yet more oh glorious DIY fun. Here inside of the boat, as well as the under the boat workshop and also in the tool trailer, is just, there's mess everywhere and I can't work like that. So I gotta get busy cleaning that up, but I won't bore you guys with that stuff. So we'll end this week's video here, and then I hope to see all you guys back here aboard the catamaran next week for yet more oh glorious DIY fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. See you!